Hello and welcome back to my channel. My name is Nicole and welcome to the Great Bookshelf Declutter Reorganization. I'm not really sure which it is, but I'll tell you what it is if I can figure out how to talk. So basically, I've been in my house now for a year, and not long after moving in, we had this massive set of bookcases built into our home, and I absolutely love it. It's everything I've wanted. And while I did put a lot of thought into how I was going to put my books up here, since doing that, I've gotten more books. I've read a lot of the books on the shelves, that kind of thing. And I'm now at the point where I need to reorganize them all. And if you're wondering why, like, you're so high up and there's all this going on in terms of the shot, it's just because I want you to see the very top shelves up here, which are often out of frame. Now, my plan is not to do this all at one time because I feel like I would be overwhelmed. So what I have decided to do in 2026 is to every month spend some time working on one section of my bookcases, basically 4 to 5 shelves, and just reorganize them and get them set up how I want them to be, and then continue and move on. Now, that may mean I may decide to unhaul some books. It may just be reorganizing the books. It may be like moving books to different shelves, that kind of thing. But I don't really know how this is going to look because I think it's going to look slightly different each time. So let's go ahead and get started. I'm going to talk about what I plan to do today, and we'll see how that actually ends up going. So I'm going to be working on these 4 to 5 shelves here. So basically this one, this one, this one, and that one. And I alphabetize my books by title. So this is taking us from A through B. That's what is on those 4 shelves. And let me just tell you a little bit about what I know for sure is going on those shelves. This very top shelf here that's kind of narrow requires the books to lay horizontally. And the only thing I have on that shelf is copies of Anna Karenina. Yes, I own multiple copies of it because they're all in different translations. I like to do that with books that I feel like are worth rereading. I like rereading them in a variety of translations if they weren't written in my original language, which is English. And so this shelf is just more A's. I know on this shelf there are books behind them. What I have out in front are mostly books I have not read, and the books that are behind them are the books that I have read. But I want to get it to the point on my bookcases where I can see every book that I own. Because I just think it's easier to think about what I want to read next. I'm not a huge rereader, so I have considered taking my read books off of the shelves and putting them just somewhere else in the house, like getting a different bookcase somewhere else. But I'm not at that point of doing that, so I just want to reorganize them so I can see every book. I don't want them double stacked. I don't think there's any double stacked on this second shelf here. This gets into B's, as does the one below, but one of these 2 shelves for sure has books behind them. So we're going to see how that's going to go. I think the first thing I'm going to do is organize this top shelf and just pull those books a little further towards the edge so I can really see the spines well. And depending on how many books I have behind here, if I can't fit them all on this row, I may actually put some red books up there as well, or some more red books instead of just Anna Karenina. But we'll see. But that's what I'm going to tackle first, is these first 2 shelves that are all books whose titles start with the letter A. Now, I do have some books that I think are in another area that might need to come up there, but we'll address that after I see what's actually up there. Okay. So far, so good. What I ended up doing is I did shift pretty much every copy of Anna Karenina that I have just to this stack. There is one right here on top, and there is one more right there at the end, because that's the next translation that I'd like to read of it, which is the mod translation. And then all these other books that I added to the top are all ones that I've already read. And so that fit all of them up there. So now this shelf has no books behind it and are only the books that I want to read. I had to remove one book from that shelf, and I decided to remove Assassin's Apprentice because of all the books up there, this is the one that I feel like I'm most likely going to not want to read and that I'd be most willing to unhaul. Because even if I did end up liking this book, I'm realizing that if I really liked the whole trilogy, I'm not going to want it in this mass market paperback edition. The reason I have this was because I was able to buy it really, really cheaply, and I do want to try it. I definitely wanted to try it at the time that I bought it, but it may go, so I'm probably going to try and get this on a TBR. So I'm going to set this aside for right now. I need to check one shelf, like kind of down below there, to make sure there's nothing else that belongs up there. I have one collection of books by Edward Bulwer-Lytton, and in sort of organizing my bookcases last year, I forgot to spread those books out where they belong. And so they've just ended up on one shelf altogether, which I thought was going to be fine, but it's ended up meaning that I completely forget I own those books. So I want to make sure that none of his books that are down over there need to be up over here. So let me go check on that. Okay, nope, I'm good. So that's not too bad. Just one book from the letter A. Now let me check the 2B shelves right here. I don't think it's going to be the same case there. I think I'm going to run into a few problems, but we'll see. Okay, wow, that went way better than I thought. I actually even have room um, on really both of these shelves. This one, I didn't push them all to the left so you can't quite see, but in this space right here between the yellow and green books is actually an empty space. And then you can see here, I have room for about probably 2 books. Not that I plan on adding any, but I do want to be more aware of the space that I do have on my bookshelves so that if I do a book haul and I'm torn between books, it would probably be wise to choose books that could fit on shelves where they won't be hidden. So I was not expecting that. I really thought I still had a couple of books tucked behind these. And I didn't. Well, that's not true. There was one tucked behind there, and it was a translation of another book, but there was plenty of room on this shelf for me to take it out. So right now, the way these shelves are set up is that from this green book right here at the tip of my finger, which is Bleak House, all the way to the end where you see that red book, those are all books whose titles begin with the letter B that I have read. And all the rest of these books are unread. So I think the last thing I'm going to do is take these books that I've read and move them down a shelf so that all my unread books are kind of at the end of the letter section, if that makes sense. So let me take a second and do that. Oh, and I also need to check to see if I have any of the Edward Bulwer-Lytton books down there. I should have done that all at the same time, but I didn't. I checked. There were none over there, so let me just rearrange this. Okay, there we go. So I now see that from basically this set of green books all the way to the end are books that I have read, and then the rest of these 2 shelves are unread. And some of them, again, are the same book, but just in different translations. That happens in a couple of places. Or typically, if it's a hardcover, like these green ones, I have paperback editions of them that I bought really cheap so that I can annotate in them because they're classics that I know I would want to annotate. So yeah, that's what's going on. And I probably showed you during the B-roll this book here that has the brown spine. That turned out to be a book that was hidden behind those books. So I'm glad I took the time to really take more books off the shelf and rearrange them. And maybe that's a lesson to myself that I really need to be taking handfuls of the books off so I can really see behind them instead of just peeking. That went so fast and so easy that I feel like I should do more. There's also a part of me that says stop while you're ahead, but I don't think I'm going to. So I think I'm going to move on to the letter C, which is this shelf, and this shelf under it. So it's the next 3 shelves. This is a really packed section of my bookshelves. Let's see what we can do. And let me move you closer and a little lower so you have a better view of them. Okay, so here we are. I'm sitting on a stool now. We don't need the ladder anymore. And I have these 3 shelves of books whose titles start with the letter C. Ignore these 2 that are actually out of place. So let's take care of that right away and just move them down a shelf. Those are letter Ds. We'll get to that maybe in the next time I do this. Anyway, okay, 3 shelves of the letter C. They're pretty packed. Bob is hanging out here. I have this little light that I have not used, but could go up here. I haven't really decided. Anyway, okay. Getting overwhelmed already. Let me simply start by removing what doesn't belong here for now. We can worry about decorating the shelves later. And let me start checking to see if there's books behind here and collecting all the books that I've already read so I can put them at the end of this section, which for the most part they already are. I know I've already read these. I think the main thing I'm going to have to determine is how many books are hiding behind these rows. Hopefully not many, because I know these rows are pretty well packed and there's not a ton of room. So let's see what I come up with. Okay, so not horrible, not great. Here's what I have. I have one book that was behind here that I've already read, which is The Count of Monte Cristo. Amazing book if you've never read it. However, it's huge and chunky, and while I have some space, I don't have this book amount of space. And this is also not the only book that I found tucked behind. I also have these 3 books. One is Christmas Stories, which is book 2 with this set. It's 2 volumes of Christmas short stories by Charles Dickens. This brown one is the Edward Bulwer Lytton collection that I was talking about. And then this black one is volume 2 of the complete Map and Lucia collection, which this book I can probably move because I originally thought it was like one large book that was split into 2 volumes, and it's actually 2 volumes of like 6 novellas, I think, basically. So I don't tend to read books in a series back to back to back like that. I spread them apart a little bit. And usually the way that I shelve the books is whatever the first book is in the book that I still need to read, I shelve it there. So let me see what the first book in here is. The first book in here that I would need to read is actually called Map and Lucia. So this could actually and should actually go on my M shelf because when I go to find book 3 in the series, I'm going to look it up to see what the title is, and I would need to be able to find this book over where that title is. Or conversely, when I came to the letter M and I needed to continue a series, this should be over there. So let me go and move this over to the M's, which are basically right down there, and there should be room for this. Okay, great. So I did that, but that only takes care of one book. I still have to make room for these 3. So here's how I'm going to do it. I am going to pull books off of these shelves. I'm going to look for ones that I think I either am most likely not going to want to read in the long run, or that if I read them, unless I absolutely loved them, would probably be willing to unhaul. You know what I mean? Like those books that like the longer you have them, the more you know your reading taste, the more you're like, that's probably only going to be a 2 or 3 star for me. And you'll still try it, but you probably will be willing to let it go. Those are the types of books that I'm looking for. And I basically need to make enough space to fit these 2 books. This one will probably already fit on there, so let me go ahead and throw that on. Okay, there we go. Brought you in closer for this final shot. So what I ended up doing is I did end up making enough space that I could fit my paperback edition of The Count of Monte Cristo next to my hardcover edition of it. And again, they are in, well, in this case, they're not in 2 different translations. I have the hardcover edition because in theory, this will last longer being a hardcover, especially in moves and things like that. The paperback edition is the one that I annotated. And again, that's just how I personally like to do things with books that I absolutely love and know I will read and reread. Okay, now I do still have a little bit of room now on both of these shelves, but let me show you what I ended up pulling off the shelves. The first set of books that I pulled off are both by the same author who I have read from before, and I found one of his works that, a lot of people just love to just be okay for me. I can see why people absolutely love the book. I thought the book itself was really insightful, and I'm talking about One Day in the Life of I'll put it up on the screen. I don't know why I'm totally blanking on the name. I think it's because I always get it confused with the short story by Tolstoy because the names are very similar, even though they're not. Doesn't matter. Anyway, the author I'm talking about is Alexsandr Solzhenitsyn, whose last name I also really mess up. And I pulled his books Cancer, War, and The First Circle. The First Circle definitely doesn't belong over here. So let's talk about Cancer Ward. How about that? This is a book that I have had on multiple TBRs, and I think it just keeps getting sort of pushed off and not addressed because I found his writing, while very informative, to also be kind of dry and just, I don't know. Like, I felt like I kind of was one and done with his writing. I think I want to try this, and maybe this will be the push that I need to get it on a TBR sooner and really focus on it. And if not, I think I just need to admit that I really have no interest in reading this book. Now, I got this really cheap and used at the time where I thought this was going to be the first work of his that I read, and it just happened that I read the other one first, and I don't know. Another book that I'm looking at that I feel like push come to shove, I wouldn't mind unhauling, would be Jack London, The Call of the Wild, White Fang, and To Build a Fire. Every time I mention this book, people are like, yeah, you don't want to get caught up in that author drama horribleness. And so I'm like, ooh, yikes. So this is one that just from what I've read, I don't think I need to own. I know I don't need to own it. But I don't think I want to own it anymore either. So that's one. And then the third one is probably going to surprise some people. It is Can't Spell Treason Without T. It has the sprayed edges, and it's not that I don't think I will enjoy this book. This is a cozy fantasy. I really think I probably will. It's just, I know cozy fantasy isn't the type of thing that I typically would want to read over and over and over again. And I got this book for free at a book swap, so I'd be more than happy to read it and send it back out into the wild in a little free library and make somebody else's day. So, and I can't believe somebody left this at a book swap because it's basically in new condition. It doesn't matter. I think that just helps me out because I will feel no guilt about unhauling this because I paid nothing for it and got it for free, so I can give it away for free, especially if it's just to clear off my shelf. I'm going to leave this in the stack instead of moving it over to the letter F where it really should be. And the reason that is because it's by the same author, Alexsandr Solzhenitsyn. There we go. And again, I think I just need to attempt one or both of these books and just make a decision as to whether or not I really want to keep them. I think The First Circle I'm even less likely to keep because it's on a similar subject, I believe, as the first book of his that I read, where at least Cancer Ward is dealing with a totally different topic, but I also don't know that I want to get into it with him as the author. And this is no shade on any of these books except for maybe this one. Call of the Wild by Jack London. But yeah, that's just the decision I'm going to make with that. So let's talk about what I'm doing in total. Okay, back to standing. Here are all the books that I have basically taken off the shelf as part of decluttering. I'm not necessarily going to read all of these books. I am going to try and get them on my next TBR. And if that doesn't happen, then probably before I film my next set of videos for this, I will do a read or unhaul with just these books and decide what I want to do with them and either just finish them all or unhaul them. If you want to know what's going to happen with these books, like and subscribe, because I think what I'll do is I'll do an update in the next video I do in this series. So this is my great declutter. This is how I'm starting out with this handful of books, and we'll see where things go from here. Am I excited about this? I don't know, because I'm I don't know that I really want to read any of these other than Can't Spell Treason Without T, or can't spell, yeah, Treason Without T. Oh my gosh. Words are hard today, and so is reading, apparently, and alphabetizing, and a host of other things. Anyway, that's it. Let me know, do you stuff some books behind your other books? Do you do double stacking? I usually do, and I don't typically have a problem with it. It's just not something I want to do right now. And that's it for me, and I will talk to you next time. Bye.